area. Tiger Talk is brought to you by String Beans Coffee House on Lower Main in Princeton, Hancock's Neighborhood Market on Commerce Street in Katie's, delicious homemade goodness, and Perry's Floors and More. String Beans Coffee House in downtown Princeton specializes in made-to-order espresso drinks. Stop by Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to noon and enjoy a pick-me-up. You can also enjoy fresh-baked scones, homemade chocolate chip and oatmeal raisin cookies, and espresso brownies that'll keep you going all day long. They're also open on Saturday from 9 to 2. String Beans Coffee House on Lower Main in Princeton. Great coffee and more in a great atmosphere on Lower Main in downtown Princeton. And a very good morning to you. It is Tuesday, March the 27th, and it's time now for Tiger Talk here in your hometown radio station, WPKY The Tiger, and I have the pleasure of welcoming into the WPKY studios Richard Nelson. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Ty.
Richard is the executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. So
that's right.
Very, very glad to have you in the studio. You might have heard on WPKY their Policy Minute, the Commonwealth Policy Minute that you can hear. It's just a little 60-second snippet. And let's talk a little bit. Again, welcome. And let's talk about Richard real quick as the executive director. And we want to tell folks about the Commonwealth Policy Center and what their mission is and what they do.
Yeah, and I'll jump in real quick and tell you a little bit about myself and say, first of all, I'm glad to be here. One reason why is it's so close to where I live. I'm just down the road in Trigg County, and that means something because, of course, we love Trigg County, but I didn't have to travel too far to get here. The Commonwealth Policy Center is a statewide organization, and I'm all over the place, and to be fairly close to home is really it's a joy for me. I could sleep in a little bit this morning.
That's right.
And no, the Commonwealth Policy Center started 12 years ago with the goal of helping conservatives essentially to get into our state legislature. Truly principled, pro-life, pro-family, fiscally conservative people to really serve. And that's a key component. We wanted people that had a servant's heart, that would go up to Frankfurt and do what was good for all of us. And, you know, we're called a Commonwealth. That means that we have something in common. There's wealth of resources. There's a wealth of opportunities. We have political freedom. We have religious freedom. And we are looking for those people, those candidates that have a servant's heart, that really want to do what's best for the Commonwealth. And we've been very blessed with to first of all to be able to do this work, but then also with a lot of the successes that we've had as well.
How long have you been doing this work? When was it founded? When did it really get up and chugging?
Yeah, I've been involved with public policy for over 20 years, originally from Wisconsin. Okay. And I was telling you off the air, I'm a transplant, but Kentucky's our home. We've been here for 21 years now. And I took my family, my wife and our 2 kids at the time, down from Wisconsin to take a job as a field representative for another public policy group. Mm-hmm. I did that for 14 years, but then in 2012, I started the Commonwealth Policy Center, and there were a handful of other key people that really saw the need for a principled, conservative nonprofit group to engage in the public policy arena from a principled Judeo-Christian perspective. That's the easiest way to put it. From a worldview that says that there is a God who endows us with our inalienable rights, our rights and liberties, and the purpose of government is to secure those inalienable rights. And that's not something that we came up with, but our founding fathers came up with that idea, and they enshrined it in the Declaration of Independence. And we're so blessed to live in this country, so blessed to live in Kentucky, that our vision is to not just remind people of that there is a creator who endows us with rights, but we need to remind ourselves that we have a gift here that is worth preserving. We have a gift that we want to pass down to our children and our grandchildren. And this gift is not guaranteed that it'll stay here. It's not guaranteed, Ty, that you and I will have religious freedom. It's not guaranteed that we'll have political freedom to choose our own candidates. It's not even guaranteed that we can be behind these microphones and talk about the issues of the day or talk about our government. And so we are working diligently to preserve these freedoms and to work for a better Commonwealth.
Well, and it was interesting when I was reading your bio before you got here. I was going to ask you, you have an extensive background in the outdoors. You avid outdoorsman. What led you to public policy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I've probably always had a heart for history and for government and politics. My first love is the outdoors. I grew up hunting and fishing, love to camp. My family does that for on our leisure time. I actually even had a taxidermy studio for a while in Trigg County for several years, actually. And but I that's my first passion. I was in probably graduate school when I really changed direction. I studied wildlife management and biology at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, worked very briefly for the Fish and Wildlife Service, loved it. It was great work. But when I went to graduate school, I had the intent to do policy. I got a master's in public policy, but I wanted to do environmental policy, fish and wildlife policy. And I was thinking I'd be one of those policy guys at a state capitol somewhere, or maybe work in Washington, D.C. And God changed that path, and there was a hiring freeze in the federal government at the time. There was a hiring freeze at the state that I was living in at the time, and all the doors were closed. Even though I had, opportunities and interviews, those weren't opening, and eventually the door opened for me to be involved with this kind of work, the pro-family, pro-life, nonprofit sector. And I tell folks that, I have a passion for wildlife, worked in the field, and even though I'm not out working for the Fish and Wildlife Service or the Forest Service, I still work with wildlife in the political realm.
There's no doubt about that.
So we can, it's a two-legged wildlife.
Yeah, that's right.
But I enjoy this work. It's a calling. I'd say it's a ministry in a lot of respects. And God has really blessed us in what we've done here.
Well, let's talk about that just for a minute. When you're not doing this and talking about the Commonwealth Policy Center, say at a talk show or whatever, what is a day for Richard Nelson like, especially when it comes to formulating and getting this policy and what Commonwealth Policy Center is about, taking this effort out into the field and making it grow, planting the seeds, so to speak? What does your day consist of in getting the work done? Yeah,
hey, that's a great question, and it really varies throughout the seasons of the year, and it varies day to day. I'll tell you what my day was like yesterday. It consisted of starting out with a column, which I write usually a weekly newspaper column on one of the pressing issues of the day, and that happened to be the issue of fake news, and the survey that came out that said that fake news travels 6 times faster on Twitter than true news stories. And I wrote a column analyzing and trying to help people understand why that is. From there, I was on the phone with a number of people, reconnecting with people across the state that I had crossed paths with over the last couple of months, and then went to writing radio commentaries. I do a daily radio commentary that's heard on over 50 stations across Kentucky and in surrounding states. Mm-hmm. And so it takes some time, even though it's 60 seconds, it really takes hours and hours to research the issues, to know first of all, what is being talked about, what are those pressing issues that are on the table for discussion. And this means reviewing several news sources across the state, Lexington Herald-Leader, the Courier-Journal, the public radio stations across the state. And then once I've determined those issues, then I will begin writing those scripts. Yesterday I also had a lunch meeting. I travel the state regularly. I'm, of course, here in Princeton today. Tomorrow I will be in Owensboro for a series of meetings. I speak to groups often. I'll speak to churches, civic groups, political groups. We hold candidate training events. So back in the month of January, and I just mentioned that it's seasonal, the kind of things we do.
Right.
So January in even numbered years is the filing deadline for candidates who want to run for office.
Right.
And one of the things the Commonwealth Policy Center does is we will train candidates, train conservative candidates how to run effective campaigns. So for much of December and January, we were promoting and organizing this major training event. Took place in Frankfurt. We had over 100 attendees come, and we had the Lieutenant Governor, Janine Hampton, was one of the
just
speakers.
in town the other day.
Yeah, a great lady. She'll be in Cadiz tomorrow, by the way.
Okay.
She'll be at the Cadiz restaurant if anybody would like to see Lieutenant Governor Hampton, 11 o'clock at the Cadiz restaurant. So Lieutenant Governor Hampton, we had Allison Ball, State Treasurer, Mike Harmon, State Auditor, and we had a number of other people, too, that led this training to really help truly principled conservatives get elected. Come election time, we will have voter guides. We ask candidates where they stand on the issues. We'll send out questionnaires to every state house and every state senate candidate, all the way up to the congressional races, and we'll ask them, where do you stand on the sanctity of life? Where do you stand on religious freedom? And we'll have other questions as well. They respond. We report their questions to the voters. So that's another major project that we do.
Sure. Well, just looking at some of the literature you brought, again, we've talked about recruiting conservative leaders, training principled candidates, as we just mentioned, strengthening our churches, hosting conferences, engaging radio and TV, which you do, and, of course, all the media. What, in your opinion, Richard, is, we talk about fake news, we talk about real news, we get news from all kinds of sources now, social media, we're just bombarded with information. What, in your opinion, at least is probably the most pressing issue that the state has as far as the social aspects and what you see in the deterioration of maybe families or society even?
Yeah, hey, that's a good question. And as you share that, I'm thinking of the bills that are in Frankfurt right now. There's a bill dealing with the sanctity of life. It's the House Bill 454, the Human Life Protection Act. It would ban abortions after 11 weeks. It would stop what are called dismemberment abortions, very grisly description of that type of abortion procedure. That just passed the Senate the other day, passed the House, and Kentucky's on the verge of becoming perhaps the most pro-life state in the country. But the sanctity of life is got to be one of the most pressing issues. There have been, of course, the pension issue. That's a big issue.
Of course, that's a big one.
That's got a lot of people concerned, and we have been involved with that to some extent. One of the things, I think if you could distill it, Ty, into one key thing, if you could bring these other issues together and find a common denominator, it would be that we need to find a moral compass. There needs to be some standard of truth. You have political parties on the right, political party on the left, and they're going at it, and they're vying for power and position and influence. But one of the things that's missing in the conversation is, what is the moral compass? How do you judge right from wrong? Can you disagree with your opponent and without being disagreeable? Can you have civility in the public arena?
It seems we used to, but we can't any longer. Why is that?
That's a great question. People are very bitter. They're very, very angry in the direction of the country. We see it come out in the public debates. Not just that, not just the bitterness, but we see the threats. We see people going after one another on Facebook or in speeches. I think of this March for Our Lives that took place across the country on Saturday, and there was a young kid from Florida who was at Parkland, the school that had the major shooting just recently, and he had issued. Now, first of all, I can understand somebody that would be involved with a school shooting that saw their peers killed and was under that threat. I can understand the emotional trauma. I can understand the anger, the frustration. But this young kid went off on a profanity-laden rant, criticized people, actually made I don't know if threats is the word, but it was very, very critical, very threatening towards a U.S. senator that had a proposal. That is not helpful. The point in this is it's not helpful to the conversation. When you just throw gasoline on the fire without a constructive solution, that's not helping. But so there is a lot of anger. There's bitterness. And we need to get a grip and realize, look, let's take a breath. Let's slow down. Let's come to the table and discuss. Let's try to reason. Let's dialogue. But when you get to the level where you're, resorting to profanity, when you're attacking the other person, when you're making threats against the other person, that's a line that we dare not cross. But we've crossed it in too many ways.
Yeah, it's a concern for me, just as a citizen that observes. I've always kept up with news and where I get my news and how I get my news and who's giving me my news and who's feeding it the news. And there's so many, with social media, with all the news outlets, cable TV, streaming now. And the agencies that are spitting the news out. Yeah. It's hard for people to take all that information and determine what is truth, what's not truth. So I almost think, society, and this is just my opinion, is just it's just chaotic because they can't seem to filter through what the facts are.
Yeah, hey, that's a good point. With the advent of the internet and the digital media age that we're in, there are so many more news sources than we had when you and I were growing up. I'm not saying you're old, but you and I are close to the same age.
Right.
When I was growing up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we had just a handful of television channels.
Sure.
We had a few radio stations. There were more than the television stations, but we didn't have the internet. No. Cable TV was just coming into being. Satellite TV? No, that was a ways off yet. We did not have smartphones. We did not have computers. We did not have email. We did not have websites. None of that. And what that allowed for was for us to have a common society. There were only a few stations, radio or television. We had telephones that had cords that plugged into the wall.
Yes, yeah.
That was our day and age that we lived in, but that was a common society. Today, we have all this stuff, all of these different media outlets, all of these different things vying for our attention. And so we can't keep up with all of it. But one of the things it's done is it's allowed people to move into one direction or another. If you're plugged into very, very far left news or conspiratorial news or very, very far right news, you're coming to the table with a very different understanding of what the issue is. And I don't know if we don't have that common starting point anymore. The set of facts are different from those on the right as to those who are on the left, and there's no common reference point. So we live in a fractured society, I think is one way to put it. Yuval Levin wrote a book by that title,
yes.
The Fractured Republic, and we don't have that common understanding, which makes it challenging for us to have a conversation. You and I have a lot of points of reference, even though we grew up in different states, different backgrounds. We have a lot of things in common because of our age.
I noted you said Green Bay, Wisconsin. I noticed when you came in, that I wanted to think there was a cheese head on you. So I take it you like the Packers.
Oh yeah,
just to lighten the mood just a little bit.
It's almost
some heavy stuff here.
It's almost an ordinance that you got to love the Packers. I grew up in Green Bay and small town. People don't realize how small it is. Yeah. Population of about 100,000.
Wow.
Even today, it's just a little over that. So it's about the size of Clarksville, Tennessee. Not far from here. You can just about fit the entire city population into Lambeau Field. Lambeau seats about 80,000.
Wow.
You could just about seat the whole.
They're all just about there on Sunday afternoons, aren't they?
And if they're not in the stadium, they're outside having a tailgate party.
That's for sure. Well, it's so funny. I had a roommate, or not a roommate, but someone lives across the hall from me, and I'd never know you were Wisconsin because I didn't hear it. So you've done a good job since you've been down here 20 years hiding the Wisconsin.
Yeah, my father-in-law tells me I've blended into Kentucky. I've picked up the lingo, but hey, truly Kentucky is our home. We love it. We've raised our kids here. We've had 2 more kids since we came down that are born here in Kentucky, and we just absolutely love it. It's a great place to raise a family.
It is.
People are very friendly. It's a beautiful country. And hey, I need to say this for all the listeners out there, for as much as we like to complain about the weather,
yeah.
let me tell you about Wisconsin in the winter.
Yeah. I don't know if they have snow on the ground right now, but I mean, usually about this time of year, snow is just kind of leaving. But I know it can be different
in the
times.
northern part of the state. So here we are in late March. You will have snow in northern Wisconsin. You can get some of the biggest snowstorms in the month of March, even into April. We've seen some big storms into April. So it's the spring in Wisconsin is very unpredictable, and winter will last good 5-6 months up there. It's a long winter, cold and very dark.
And I'm from the extreme. I was in Florida till I was like 12, so I totally I don't think I could do it. I've been to Sheboygan and I've stood on the lake with the wind blowing right in my face in March and snow spitting, and it's quite an experience, I must say.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned House Bill, I think it was House Bill or Senate Bill 454.
That's correct, House Bill 454.
House Bill 454, I think. Yeah. What other types of legislation at the state level are you all just kind of monitoring?
Yeah, one important bill was actually House Bill 1, and it's adoption and foster care reform. This was a priority bill of the governor. David Meade is one of the House leaders who sponsored this, and the idea behind it is to make adoption easier for parents. It terminates the parental rights. One of the things, it does many things, but one of them is it terminates the parental rights of deadbeat dads who have no involvement with a kid before. They're given a shorter number of days to have involvement with their child afterwards, and if they're not, then it's easier for a family to adopt that child. Much of our adoption system is plagued by a big bureaucracy. That's one of the things that this bill addresses. It makes less paperwork for the social workers, but many kids are stuck in the adoption system for a long time, and the governor wants to really streamline that and make it easier to adopt. There are several other provisions that the bill does as well. Decreases the cost of adoptions, and it reduces the number of days that kids will spend in foster care. That's a positive bill. That bill is moving through the legislature. That's a priority. We see the pension reform. That's a huge bill. That was Senate Bill.
Are they going to get anything done?
You know, there's still a glimmer of hope that pension is done. What happened was there was agreement between the House and the Senate, but when the protests started, and a lot of bad information started to be circulated. You know, some people were saying that this bill is going to cut your pension, you're not going to get everything that you deserve. A number of things that were swirling around that scared a lot of legislators, so they put it on hold. I just read last night, though, Ty, that there is a chance that that bill could get a hearing as we move into the final week. Actually, we're into the final days.
As I say, yeah,
we're in the final days. So here it is, Tuesday. The last day is Thursday. And then they'll come back for 2 days in the middle of April for a veto override session. Now, there is a chance that business gets done then. If it doesn't get done at that time, I'm thinking there could be a special session. Yeah, very good.
Very good chance of that. Yeah, because I think, boy, it's a lot of folks are nervous. A lot of folks that have paid in all these years. A lot of, you know, I will have some guests coming up later on. I've got some retired teachers associations that are coming in and going to talk about it. And of course, I have many friends that are teachers that have been working within the system. I have many friends that are state workers. But it's got to be a pretty scary time. I mean, you've been promised this, and where were some of the, in your opinion, where were some of the groups out there, watchdog groups, so to speak, maybe to when all this taking from and promising to give back? Where were these groups?
You know, they were not involved. They were not sounding the alarm. This is a problem that has been a long time in the making. This did not just happen when Governor Bevin got elected. This is something that has happened under the Beshear administration. It was underfunded by $1 billion per year under Governor Steve Beshear. This was something where the state legislature for 15 out of the last 22 years, it has not been properly funded. It has been underfunded then. And really one of the reasons why this has happened is because the state legislature has taken money from that pension fund, money that was dedicated to it. They've taken it out for other projects, to build roads and to fund other public projects, and they have they did not put the money back. So this is a problem with the legislature, who they did not deal with it. And now it's a crisis because the governor has gotten in there. He has been given projections as to here's where we are. Here's where we will be in 6 years. And listen to this, Ty. 6 years, it will go belly up. If nothing changes right now, it will go belly up. So that's what should scare the teachers. Not that the governor's trying to fix it, not that the legislature's addressing it, but if it is not fixed, there will be a real crisis. And I applaud the governor for working to fix it, to make some structural changes. I need to address one thing too. One of the points of misinformation that says that they're going to cut your pension. You may not get your pension under this bill. Well, that's simply not true. What is being proposed to be cut is the cost of living adjustment, which is 1.5%. This bill proposes a 0.5% decrease, so it would only be a 1% cost of living adjustment. I believe it's per year for retirees, and so that's it amounts to about $3 billion. Look, the taxpayers are going to be stuck with the projection is between $40 to $80 billion. Let's just round it out and say $60 billion.
That's huge.
Let's say it's $60 billion underfunded, and so if the teachers contribute about, it's $3 to $4 billion if they accept that 0.5% cost of living adjustment cut. So $4 billion for the teachers, let's say, means $46 billion for the taxpayers that they're going to have to come up with. I think that's
the balance of it.
That's the balance, and I think it's fair when you look at trying to solve a serious problem, a structural problem, and just the reality that this might not be there. All sides need to look at ways to contribute.
Now, I saw the radio announce. I saw the governor. On the radio. Do you think he was just showing his frustration there? I mean, a lot of teachers did not like those comments, and I don't know if it was just frustration, but I don't think he did himself any good by that little radio rant that he had. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I was asked this question last week. I do a live hour-long call-in show in Russellville every third Friday of the month, and maybe it was 2 weeks ago now. And I was asked that same question, and I said, I would not have not done that. At the same time, and I can't defend that.
Were you surprised by it?
I'm not, and I'll tell you why. Because I know the governor.
Right.
I see the pressure cooker that he's in,
right.
and
Yes.
the criticism, the difficult issue, and when you deal with the attacks, and eventually that's going to get to you. And I think that I'd probably react the same way. Sad to say it. I hope I'm glad I'm not in that position. Glad I'm not in the shoes. But I think that considering everything and considering the attacks and the misinformation, that I can understand why he did that. I can't justify it. I can't defend that. But I think at heart, when you consider what he's trying to do, he's trying to save it. He is trying to keep the state's promise to the teachers. He is, I think, at heart trying to do the right thing, and yet he's getting beat up over and over. I can understand that.
What do you say to folks that say, well, let's just legalize more of the gaming rooms and those kind of things, and let's really generate some revenue and do different things besides the traditional tax route? What do you say to those kind of proposals that might bring alternative ways to generate revenue for the Commonwealth?
Yeah, and that's a real proposal in Frankfort.
Right.
There was a House bill with 13, 14 sponsors that would have legalized casino gambling, and 100% of the revenue would have gone to the pension fund. That's a bad idea. I publicly spoke against that and said that it's not a winner. To legalize casinos and to allow people to lose more of their money, more of their resources. What you're doing is you're siphoning off discretionary dollars from existing businesses wherever those casinos are located. First of all, you are creating a new revenue stream, but you're siphoning off dollars from other businesses where people might have gone to get purchase a new appliance or a new car or groceries, whatever it might be. They're taking discretionary dollars, going to the casino, and they're losing it. That's what happens. And so it hurts those other existing businesses. It hurts individuals that become addicted. In the end, there's real no gain from casino gambling's being introduced. If that were the case, then Illinois wouldn't have any problems at all. They've got casinos all over.
That's a good point. They do. So what are some of the alternatives that the Commonwealth Policy Center? What kind of ways to generate revenue?
Yeah, I think that if you create a climate that's conducive to new businesses coming in, if you reform the tax code, if you remove barriers that make it difficult for businesses to come in, businesses will come here. I'm reminded of that line from Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come.
Yes.
Well, if you build a favorable tax structure, businesses will come. And you know what, Ty? We've seen that happen here in Kentucky in the last couple of years,
yes,
where some major structural changes have taken place in Frankfurt. Right to work, for example. We have become a right-to-work state, which simply says that if you want to work at a place that has a union, you're not forced to join the union. That's all that it does. Prior to that, you had to join the union. It was law that you had to do that. So we've become a right-to-work state. We've repealed the prevailing wage. There's another bill called Paycheck Protection Act, which says that unions cannot automatically deduct people who are in that workplace or in that shop can't deduct union dues from them. What this has done is it has brought businesses in to Kentucky. We've seen about $9 billion of new investment come into Kentucky, new businesses opening up or existing businesses that have expanded operations. And that's because of policies that have changed. And I would say that if we continue on that path, if we continue to fix the outdated tax code, and we'll eventually see, I think, more businesses come in.
What's your opinion of the announcement yesterday by Senator McConnell about the hemp bill, and the agriculture aspect of the hemp? I think Commissioner Quarles on board with that as well. And what do you think about that as far as putting in an injection for the state?
Yeah, my understanding is that Kentucky used to be a major hemp producer prior to World War II. Hemp is a product that's used for clothing and rope. And
there is a difference between the cannabis that is grown for other reasons besides this industrial hemp that can be used for clothing and ropes and all kinds of oils that heal and all kinds of things.
That's right. So if there's a market there, if there's a new potential crop for farmers, by all means, let's do it. Hemp, and I think it needs, and you touched on it, but it needs to be said again. Mm-hmm. Hemp is different from marijuana in that the THC content is very, very low. It's about 5% of what marijuana has. So as far as the threat of illegal drugs or people using that, smoking it, I don't think that's there, from my understanding. But again, hey, if there's a demand, if there's a market, I think by all means let's go for it.
Well, I know recently in Carlisle County, they've got a plant that's going to be employing people for some of the hemp that's being produced. So I mean that's a positive thing.
And Carlisle County is one of those counties that really has been hit hard in the last 10 years or so. It's decreased in population. People don't have jobs there, and so they're looking for new things. One of my board members lives in Carlisle County, in the tiny town of Cunningham. Okay. And it's a large agriculture community. It's, of course, right on the Mississippi River. And, back 20, 30, 40 years ago, they had barges that would come down. They had some businesses there. And so this talk of introducing hemp and this hemp processing plant there.
That's what it is.
That's big news.
It is
That's big news and good news for them.
And I think you'll probably see, if that legislation passes, I think that was at the federal level, and think they've been working in statewide for the legislation that would help facilitate those endeavors, and it seems like to me it would just be a plus for everyone.
Yeah,
especially our farmers,
so.
And Kentucky's agricultural, so. it's the way to do it.
And this is something that is so much more productive than just a few minutes ago we were talking about gambling expansion. When you think about gambling, you're talking about something that it's not creating any new wealth. It's not really a new service. It's simply giving a monopoly to one industry, which is the horse racing industry, which has the upper hand here. Giving a monopoly to certain industries, it gives them an unfair playing field. They have casinos, they'll have restaurants, they'll have hotels, unfair advantage over other existing businesses. But for what? So that people can come and lose their money. Tom, I don't think monopolies are a good idea. I don't think the idea of gambling to gain new wealth. And here's what I've said in other venues, that if gambling expansion is such a good idea for the state, if this is something that really is going to help solve the pension crisis or bring in new revenue to the general state coffers, why don't individuals gamble to bring wealth into their own family budget? I mean, think about it this way. If you had a budget shortfall in your own family budget, would you actually take a certain percentage and go to Metropolis, Illinois, just down the road, and say, I'm going to gamble this amount with the hope, with the intent to bring in X number of dollars? Well, no. I don't think you would do that. I hope you wouldn't. So then why should the state expand gambling in order to do that as well? It's so counterintuitive. I need to add a little humor to this discussion, if I could.
Yeah.
There was a bill.
I love to laugh.
And it's either funny or it's one of those things that'll make you cry. But there was a bill introduced by Adam Koenig, a Northern Kentucky state representative, that would have redefined blackjack and poker not as games of chance, but as games of skill. It actually would have changed the legal definition of those two things. And I've never thought of blackjack or poker as a game of skill, but he would have done that if his bill, made it anywhere. But the intent there was to expand gambling, going a little different route.
Never would have thought somebody would. But that's kind of an ingenious way to kind of get something looked at it from a paradigm shift, so to speak.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. We've had a tremendous discussion here. We'll catch our breaths here just a second and touch on a few other things and wrap up. So it's been very interesting.
Yeah.
You're listening to Tiger Talk. It is 8:43 on your hometown radio station, 103.3 FM and 1580 AM, WPKY, The Tiger. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Hancock's Neighborhood Market on Commerce Street in Cadiz is the place to shop for delicious homemade goodness. Hancock's makes their own fresh chicken salad, pimento cheese, salads, and a variety of mouth-watering desserts sure to please your entire family. While at Hancock's, be sure to visit their meat department for the best selection of USDA choice meats in the area. Hancock's Neighborhood Market in Cadiz, hometown, homemade goodness, and the Hancock name you know and trust for quality for your family. Hancock's Neighborhood Market on Commerce Street in Cadiz.
Since 1978, Perry's Floors and More has been selling, installing, and servicing homeowners throughout Western Kentucky with quality flooring and workmanship. Perry's Floors and More carries luxury vinyl plank and luxury vinyl tile, carpet, window treatments, and more. Quality brands like Mannington, Shaw, Tarkett, Beaulieu, and Flexitech. There is a reason why we say you can walk on our reputation. Come see Bill and Lucy at 127 West Market Street or call 270-365-9869.
At 8:44, we are back here on Tiger Talk, and our guest is Richard Nelson. He's the executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. And Richard lives in Cadiz. He's a neighbor, and we're certainly glad to have you here. Boy, we've touched on all kinds of topics, and a lot of them, are very serious. Let's talk as we wrap up a little bit. One more thing I want to ask you about anyway, get your opinion, because we talked about the center, what you all work toward. Let's talk about our families.
Yeah.
And as we get, it just seems like that we're all different now, and things have happening. But in your opinion, we talked a little bit about this off air. What is something that we can do with families that may be not so traditional? It seems like more and more we don't see the mom, the dad, and the kids.
Yeah.
Families are a hodgepodge and a mixed match of things. But how do you think that has affected society and how things work? And what are some of the things that you all are doing to help strengthening those families and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. The statistics tell us, Ty, that it's about 40% of all births are out of wedlock. About 50% of all children will live with one parent at some time in their lives before the age of 18. We're seeing cohabitation increase, people who are not even getting married at all. Divorce is probably leveled out, but divorce is still very, very common. So we're seeing the breakup of the family. We're seeing kids that don't have both a mother and a father in the home, and that's a strike against them. It's very difficult for kids just to grow up with two parents. I mean, in today's culture, but when they don't have both parents, it's more challenging. So this does have societal impacts. It does. Our Creator has designed it that kids have a mother and a father. That's the ideal, and I know it's not the reality in many cases, but that's the ideal. And as a society, we should be aiming for public policy that upholds that ideal. And so when here we are in Princeton, when you are in a neighborhood and you see a single mom raising her kids, God bless her. I mean, what a tough job. But look at ways to reach out. Look at ways, if there's a young boy that needs a man, mentoring and reaching out and giving of yourself. Guys, let me challenge you. That's a great opportunity for you to mentor, to help these young boys. Same with women, if they're young girls that need mentoring. And there are programs that do this. Big Brothers and Big Sisters is one that comes to mind, where you have mentor programs that will connect a willing adult with a kid who needs a mentor.
Yeah.
This is one way that we can help strengthen.
Volunteer in the schools, read to kids, just whatever, those kind of things.
Yeah, good. Those are both good suggestions. So, we're all in this together.
Yes.
Ty, we live in the community, and we should care about our neighbors. We should work to help those who need help, and there are many opportunities to do that.
Another question that comes to mind, do you feel like this is a very giving community? We just came off a very successful auction. Some of the civic groups got together. It seems like every time there is a fundraiser for either an individual who may have lost someone, or this community gives. It's a giving community. But do you feel like the church is still there? I'm talking about the church. I'm not talking about any one denomination or anything. To help those in need. It seems like maybe 50, 60 years ago, the church played a larger role in supporting and helping. Just my opinion, it seems like it's gotten away from that. I mean, no, they're still very giving churches. I read every day, here's a clothes closet, here's a food pantry. They're still doing that, but it just, I don't know. Is that something that the Commonwealth Policy Center has studied, look at? Do they see that?
We do work closely with churches. We'll speak in churches regularly. We work with pastors, especially when it comes to providing resources and materials for them to address many of the issues of the day, public policy issues of the day. My observation with churches as far as community outreach is that it is still there. I can't compare it to what they did 50 years ago. In the last 20 years, I think I have a fair gauge, and it's more of a sense of what I'm seeing in this community or that community.
Right.
But Ty, I still am seeing churches that are involved. Now church attendance has decreased in the last 40 or 50 years. We have seen a decrease. Therefore, there are less people supporting the churches. And when there's less support, then there's less resources to help people in their community.
Right.
But when you stop and think about who's leading with the clothing closet ministries, who's leading with the food pantries, you think of the Salvation Army, you think of St. Vincent de Paul. You think of those kind of ministries. It's still the churches that are leading.
There's a lot of good things going on. I think in a micro aspect in communities, and some macro as well. But mainly, I just feel like that. I've talked to certain people, and not to interrupt you, mean to. Is that the church seemed to take care of where say government has stepped in, so to speak. More than, say, years ago, and that I just didn't know the Commonwealth Policy Center studies and what you all see with your engaging churches, do you see that there's a trend like that, or do you see that they're just, no, it's just about, the way it's always been?
Yeah, I have not looked at that specifically, but I do see churches as, in general, as a positive good for communities. Doing outreach, ministering to the least of these, those who need help. I speak to ministerial associations across the state, and I often see these associations have resources to help the homeless, to help those who can't pay their electric bill or put food on the table. So that's a common thing I see, and individual churches are doing that as well. And as far as a positive good, the overall good for a community, one of the things that churches bring, and this is something we talked about early on in the program, they bring that moral compass back into the public realm. And that's something that we desperately need today. Churches, Bible-believing churches are preaching God's word, and they're saying, here we have a God. He gives us rules to live by. He does so because he loves us. And that's a message that we need to hear, not just in the pulpits, from the pulpits on Sunday mornings, but we need to hear it in the public arena, that there are rules for living. And one of the biggest challenges we face is moral relativism, that, Ty, that's your truth, or this is my truth. No, there is something called truth. There is a creator who gives us truth, and he gives us guardrails to stay within. And we need to hear that in the public arena. And this is what churches bring to it.
Right. So. Well, we have not touched on, and as we wrap up, one other thing. The debate about the school shootings and the gun control debate and all of that. What is the Commonwealth Policy Center? Where are we there?
Yeah. It's tragic what we're seeing happen with the mass shootings. And this is really a reflection of where a lot of people are. Just that somebody would take a gun into a school setting where everybody's unarmed and to impose that, to kill innocent people, speaks to where our culture is. Ty, this didn't happen 50 years ago. When I was in school, I graduated in 1988, we actually could take guns to school,
Sure.
And I did it myself. And
Yeah,
we didn't cross our minds to shoot fellow students, but we did it because we were going on a hunting trip after school.
Sure. We're going to go squirrel hunting or, rabbit hunting or whatever.
And that was a common thing. People in the listening audience may have done the same thing. But it was not an issue. Back in the 80s, school shootings were not an issue. It is today. So we need to ask ourselves, what's changed? Well, one of the things that's changed is we just mentioned a few minutes ago, we've lost a moral compass. We've lost a reference point between right and wrong. Violence is prevalent in our culture, so we're entertained by violence, whether it's movies or violent video games or music. That's a negative influence. And I don't want to blame any one thing in particular,
Right.
but that is certainly an influence. We have a lower regard for human life today than we did a few generations ago. When you add these things up, I think the logical result is mass shootings or more violence in society. And that's what we're dealing with. The guns, I've written on this. That is part of the discussion. I do not believe that banning guns or certain kind of guns is the answer. I think that it neglects something that's much deeper. And really what's going on, as I shared, is there is a change in the culture. There are negative influences in the culture. But there's also a heart issue here. What is going on in the human heart? What would lead somebody to commit mass violence, to take a gun and to turn it on innocent people? There's a deep heart issue that we need to be willing to talk about. The Marshall County shooter not far from here talked about he was an avowed atheist. He saw no purpose in life. He was publicly quoted in saying this. He wanted to see the response that people would have if he did a school shooting. I have a very difficult time getting my mind around that mindset, that I see no purpose in life. I wanted to shoot these kids just to see how people respond. I've got no reference point for that. Yeah. But that kid, somehow that entered into his mind, into his heart, that was acceptable. Look, that is acceptable, or that's possible when you lose a moral compass, when you reject the idea that there's a creator, when you reject the idea that there's rules by which society ought to live by, that there's a moral law. This is the fruit of this mentality that really has infiltrated our culture. And part of the work of the Commonwealth Policy Center, maybe one of the most important things we do, is to try to bring that moral compass back into the conversation. We need Christians to speak out on these issues. We need good legislators that will go up to Frankfurt and make laws for us based on a moral reference point. And for all of the talk that the ACLU says separation of church and state, for all the talk that these other groups that would impose their secularism on us, I would say that all laws they have a moral basis. All legislation is based on somebody's morality, and it's just a question of whose morality will it be based upon. And we have a Judeo-Christian framework in this country. The founding fathers were influenced by a Judeo-Christian worldview, and that's the kind of government that they put together for us. It doesn't impose a religion. It doesn't say you need to be Catholic or you need to be Baptist or Methodist. It simply says that there's a creator. There are certain moral rules, and this is the kind of structure that we're given. The question is do we want to keep that structure, this kind of government that we have?
Right. Tough issues, tough just conversations to be had, tough decisions to be made, a lot of debate. Yeah. Where does the Commonwealth Policy Center go for the rest of 2018 and into the future? What kind of work will you continue to be doing here the rest of the year and ongoing?
Yeah, one of the things that the Lieutenant Governor and I will be doing is we're going to be hosting regional candidate training for local candidates across Kentucky. And this is going to happen in the months of May and June, where we're going to travel to a few different regions of the state and bring a condensed version of our candidate training. So Lieutenant Governor Jeanine Hampton and myself, and we may have some other people join us as well for that. That's a major undertaking. Governor Bevin is hosting an event for us in Frankfurt, a Friend of Commonwealth Policy Center event. We have information about the elections coming up. There's a primary in May, and we are compiling responses to our questionnaire, and that will be on our website probably in early May. We'll have information about the primary elections. And then in November, we have a major election.
Yes.
We will have voter guides. They should be available sometime in September. Voter guides that tell you who's on the ballot for the state house and state senate, and also where the candidates stand on the issue. So those are a few of the big projects that we have going on.
And if you want to check out what the Commonwealth Policy Center is about, you can go to their website, www.commonwealthpolicycenter.org. Do you have other presence on any kind of other on the social media? Do you all do that?
We
Yes,
do. Yeah, thanks for asking that. We do have a Facebook page. You just type in Commonwealth Policy Center, and our Facebook page should come up. Go and check that out, and please like us if you would, and follow us. So we're on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. You can find us. The Twitter handle is at CPC4. It's the number 4 Kentucky, and that's CPC. The number 4 Kentucky. That's where we are on Twitter.
Kentucky spelled out.
Kentucky spelled out. That's correct.
Okay.
And you'll see a lot of our links to opinion pieces, blog posts, our comments on the news. Both there and on Facebook. And then, as you mentioned, we're on the web, CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org, and you can read our blog. We'll have a new blog post every day, and you can sign up to get our e-letter. We have an e-letter sign up there. Right on our front page. Just go to CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org, and you can sign up to get our e-letter.
And we've been playing the policy minutes here on WPKY as well, and they come on. I've got those scheduled before we sign on the air at 6 o'clock every morning, a little bit before that. So you can listen to those. You might hear some of those on Sunday programming as well here on WPKY. And they're on several stations throughout the Commonwealth.
Thank you for running that, too. I want to thank you personally for carrying that. That's a blessing to us. We are on over 50 stations now across Kentucky in different formats, too. We're on Christian stations. We're on News Talk. We're on Country. We're here at WPKY.
Classic
and I appreciate you. Yeah, so classic hits, all the different venues. And we're trying to address the issues of the day from that Judeo-Christian worldview. And I'm just very pleased that so many stations are carrying our Commonwealth Minute.
Well, as we wrap up, Richard, certainly appreciate you being here. Is there anything else that you'd just like to say before in closing?
Yeah, hey, it's been really great to be on the program with you. Maybe we can do this again sometime. Love to do it. I encourage the listeners, and I want to thank them for joining us as well, but encourage you to check out our website. Go to CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org. Sign up to get our e-updates. We'd be happy to send that out to you. And then also pray for us. We've got a big job in front of us, and we appreciate your prayers as we do this.
All right. Pleasure meeting you, and we've spoken several times, but it's a pleasure definitely to meet you, and glad to have you in studio, and you can come back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. That's Richard Green. He is Richard Nelson. I don't know where I want to say. I've had a friend named Richard Green, and
you're thinking green and gold. Packers is what you're doing.
I'm thinking the Packers. That's right. That's Richard Nelson. He is the executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center, and it's been a pleasure to have him in the WPKY studios this morning. Again, check out their website at CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org. They also have a presence on Facebook and Twitter. At Twitter, it's CPC, the number 4, Kentucky, and that's how you find them on Twitter. So thank you so much. Appreciate Richard being our guest today. Tune in tomorrow. It's Wednesday. It's our extension program on Tiger Talk. It's 9:01. You're listening to your hometown radio station, WPKY, The Tiger. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a good day. Thanks for listening to